Simon Sinek Start with Why is one of the most watched TED Talks ever, but only 0.03% of talks ever cross 10 million views. So why this one? Even more, his talk was in front of 50 people with bad audio and no slides and still got more than 10 million views. But a lot of people who have watched Simon Sinek's TED Talk have no idea why it actually worked. My name is Marina Baraeva. I study the speeches that break through, the ones that go viral, build careers, and change how people think, so that you can reverse engineer what actually works and use it in your public speaking. And Simon Sinek's TED Talk, How Great Leaders Inspire Action, is one of the best case studies I've ever analyzed, because it's not a speech that accidentally became popular. The way Simon Sinek structured it is incredible. It was built to be shared. Today I'm going to show you 5 specific techniques Simon Sinek uses inside the talk itself that people barely notice. And then I will show you 3 factors outside the TED Talk that made it explode the way it did. One of them is something almost no one remembers, even if they watch the talk multiple times. It happens at exactly 5 minutes and 5 seconds. I'll point it out when we get there. By the end of this video, you will not only understand why this talk became so popular, you'll also have a few clear tools you can use the next time you're building your speech or keynote. But before we get to the talk itself, I need to tell you something about Simon Sinek that most people don't know. Because there is a myth around successful speakers. People think that having a good idea is all you need to be invited to a big stage, and then your life changes overnight. From the outside, Simon Sinek's story looks exactly like that. But it wasn't. Before giving a TED Talk, Simon Sinek was running a small marketing consultancy in New York. Things looked fine. Good clients, decent work. But in his own words, he had completely lost his passion. He was embarrassed to admit it, so he hid it. He pretended to be more successful and happier than he felt. He called that period a dark and lonely place. A friend finally called him out, and once he opened up, something shifted. He knew what he did. He knew how he did it, but he did not know why. That's when he became obsessed with one question. Why do some people and organizations inspire and others don't? He started studying great leaders and found patterns. That's when he discovered the concept of why and came up with the golden circle. But here's the part that does not get talked about enough. He did not go straight to a TEDx stage. First, he started helping friends find their whys, charging $100 a session. People just kept inviting him, and he kept saying yes. That's where the speech got so good. Not on stage, but in living rooms. Why does this matter for you? Because by the time Simon Sinek gave a TEDx talk, he had already been delivering an extended version of it for a few years. He knew the content inside out. He knew what he was doing. The talk was already tested. That's not an overnight success story. That's a guy who was so committed to an idea that he kept showing up in living rooms for almost nothing, until the idea was sharp enough to present it on a TED stage. If you're waiting to be discovered before you start speaking, you're skipping the step that makes the discovery possible. So what did Simon Sinek actually do to make his Start with Why TED Talk go viral? He starts with something you don't consciously notice, but it's incredibly effective. The first 60 seconds of the Simon Sinek TED Talk are focused on one thing: creating a curiosity gap and refusing to close it. Here's what he does. He opens with a meta question. How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? And then immediately pivots to 3 very specific why puzzles. Why is Apple so innovative year after year? Why did Martin Luther King lead the civil rights movement? Why did the Wright brothers figure out powered flight when better funded teams didn't? Notice what he doesn't do. he doesn't answer any of these questions. He just kind of pulls off these questions into people's minds. Now, a lot of speakers open with a story or a bold claim or with one question, and those work. But Simon Sinek does something unusual here. He opens with 3 mysteries from completely different areas and at the first sight have nothing to do with each other. And here's the interesting psychological trick. When the brain sees 3 unrelated examples that seem to share something, it immediately starts searching for the pattern. The audience isn't passively listening anymore. They're thinking about the answers to those questions and asking themselves, what do those 3 things have in common? That's the rule of 3 in action. But not just for structure. In this case, it's for uncertainty. And there's another hidden layer here. Those 3 examples are also 3 different audiences that Simon Sinek addresses in one speech. Most speakers try to talk to everyone. But while Simon Sinek Start with Why concept can help anyone find their purpose, he addressed leaders. Even more, he's actually speaking to 3 very specific groups: companies, entrepreneurs and founders, and also those individuals with a strong message who often become thought leaders. 3 groups, 1 idea. And here's the subtle part. He also builds emotional intensity. Apple is innovative and interesting. Wright brothers are inspiring. Martin Luther King, with his movement, is powerful. So here's the key point I want you to remember. Even if you can help everyone with your idea, focus on one specific audience that will benefit the most from your message. If you want to target more than one group, choose people who are connected by the same idea and closely related to your message. Then tailor your speech to that audience's needs and challenges. When you do that, your message becomes sharper. It resonates more deeply with the right audience. And for everyone else, they'll still get it through the examples and analogies you've built for your core audience. It's not about excluding anyone. It's about making sure your most important audience feels heard and understood. But here's the real question. How do you make people actually remember your idea? One of the main reasons Simon Sinek's TED Talk went viral is because he gave the audience a visually simple framework. Why, how, what? Most talks fall for one reason. They're too complex to remember by the time people get home. But the golden circle is so simple that people can easily explain it to others, and even a child could draw it from memory after seeing it once. And that is exactly the point. When Simon Sinek draws is live on stage, you're not just hearing the explanation, you're following the drawing process. You see how the idea is built in real time. The active engagement helps burn the image into your memory. Now, compare that to what happens when a speaker shows a complex slide on the screen. The audience might look at it, maybe take a photo, but how much of it do they actually remember? A live drawing is different. So here's the insight for your public speaking. A framework that can be easily drawn on a napkin will have more lasting impact than a complex framework. If your core idea needs 5 slides to explain it, it's not ready yet. It doesn't matter if you understand it perfectly. What matters is whether your audience could explain it to a friend the next day. That's how your idea becomes something people can share. That's why Simon Sinek Start with Why became so widely known. People walked away with a practical tool that they could easily explain to others. Now, here's the thing about starting a TED Talk like this. It's easy to watch Simon Sinek and think, I need to find my why. I need to build a framework. I need to get on a TEDx stage. And maybe you do. But maybe that's not actually your next step. Because becoming a recognized speaker like Simon Sinek requires a combination of several skills and strategies. And to build the right strategy for you, it's important to know where you are right now and what move actually gets you closer to where you want to be. To help you with that, I put together a Level Up Your Public Speaking guide. It shows you what stage you're currently at in your public speaking journey and what your next specific focus should be if you want to grow as a speaker and get recognized for your ideas. The guide is completely free. The link is in the description below. Go check it out. Back to the TED Talk. Simon Sinek's Golden Circle was a great way to make his message memorable. But having a simple framework isn't enough for a good speech. To make it really work, that framework needs examples people can understand and relate to, so they can see that it's practical. A lot of speakers stop at, "Here's my framework." But the real impact comes from showing people how that framework changes the way they think or act. That's why great public speakers use stories and examples in their speeches to illustrate their ideas. But here's what's fascinating about Simon Sinek's TED Talk. Simon Sinek discovered his Start with Why idea through a deeply personal crisis. And yet, there's almost no personal story in the entire talk. His one self-reference is brief. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery. That's it. One sentence. And then he moves on. So how does he make the framework feel practical and credible? He borrows other people's credibility. Simon Sinek explained the Golden Circle through several examples across the TED Talk, and each one is doing a specific job. Right from the beginning, he borrows Apple's credibility. Everyone in the room knows Apple. By using Apple to illustrate the framework, Simon Sinek isn't just giving an example. He is creating an association between his model and something the audience already trusts and admires. He hadn't worked with Apple at that time, but he didn't need to. He used a psychological effect to create that bridge. If you already trust Apple, you're more likely to trust that Start with Why idea Simon Sinek is explaining. That's a credibility transfer. Then he uses the Wright brothers versus Samuel Pierpont Langley's story. Langley had the money, the government funding, the press following him around. The Wright brothers had a bicycle shop and a belief in what they were doing. And the Wright brothers flew first. Simon Sinek uses this contrast to show that resources don't create breakthroughs, but purpose does. It's the Golden Circle principle in narrative form. And then Martin Luther King and the March on Washington is the emotional peak. Simon Sinek anchors it with one number. 250,000 people showed up at the mall in Washington. There were no invitation, no event registration. Those people just believed in something. Simon Sinek also uses other examples as the contrast or to illustrate the idea. But the whole point is that these stories and case studies are shared references. You don't have to believe Simon Sinek. You already believe the examples. And this is huge for you, especially if you are just developing your idea or building credibility. Sometimes your personal story is not the strongest proof. And maybe you don't yet have enough clients' results to reference. That's okay. Borrow credibility from examples people already trust. Think about well-known companies, leaders, or moments people are already familiar with. Connect your idea to those. Your message becomes more convincing, not because you said so, but because people trust the example. But here's something else happening in this talk that directly affected why Simon Sinek's Start with Why concept became very popular. If you watch it carefully, there's one sentence Simon Sinek repeats word for word 6 times. I'll tell you what it is in a moment, but first, think about this. Most speakers try to pack too much into one speech. They want to give the audience everything they know. However, that usually makes the message harder to follow and easier to forget. Simon Sinek does the opposite. The entire talk is built around one big idea explained in one sentence. People don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. He says the exact same sentence 6 times during his 70-minute TED Talk. He shares different stories, different examples, different angles, but every time he comes back to the same point. People don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. The stories and case studies aren't the point, they are proof. The phrase is the point. When you hear it the first time, it's new. By the third time, you remember it. By the fifth, you are saying it in your head with you. Repetition is how ideas go from heard to remembered to shared. The brain doesn't learn through variety. It learns through repetition with variety. Each time you hear the same idea through a new example, it's like looking at the same object from different sides, from different angles. And after a while, it becomes familiar. And that's when people remember it well enough to apply and share with others. Now, when you think about your speech, what is your big idea? What is the one sentence that someone should be able to repeat the next day? If you can't identify it, you probably don't have one. And if you don't have one, your audience can't remember your idea even if they love the talk. It's like asking people to share your idea but not giving them anything clear to share. If they can't repeat it, they can't share it. So start by writing your idea as one clear sentence. Then build your entire speech around proving it from different angles. I would even suggest start collecting strong, bold statements and phrases connected to your core message, so you can reuse them in your speeches and content. Turn your message into viral catchphrases. These are the phrases you want people to associate with you. For Simon Sinek Start with Why comes down to people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. What could be yours? The last technique is easy to miss because it's happening at the level of structure, not content. Simon Sinek uses rhetorical questions to mark every major pivot in the talk. He opens with questions. He opens the biology section with a question. He opens the Martin Luther King section with "How do you do that?" before explaining the March on Washington. This isn't a stylistic choice. It's a structural system. Here's why it works. When you make a statement, the audience listens passively. When you ask a question, even a rhetorical one they're not supposed to answer out loud, the brain immediately switches to prediction mode. It's like they think to themselves, I wonder what the answer is. That microsecond of engagement is the difference between an audience that is following you and an audience that is with you. Questions are also a reset mechanism. They signal, oh, new section is coming, pay attention. They're cleaner than when you say, moving on to my next point. They feel more like a conversation, not a presentation. So a public speaking tip for you here is when you prepare your speech, see if you can add a question when you move from one idea to another. These are the parts where you'd naturally say something like, so another thing I want to talk about, and then continue. But instead of that, pause and ask a real question your audience can think about for a moment. Because here's the difference it makes. A statement tells the audience where you are going. A question makes them want to go there with you. That's the difference between a speech people just follow and the one people remember. Now, these are 5 practical public speaking techniques you can learn from Simon Sinek's TED Talk. But here's the thing. Those 5 techniques explain why the talk is so good. They don't fully explain why it reached 100 million views. For that, we need to look at 3 things that happened outside the talk. And honestly, this might be the most useful part of this video for your speaking career. This is something you can add to your speaking strategy as a public speaker. Simon Sinek gave his TEDx Talk in September 2009. It's the same year TED launched the TEDx program. TEDx was brand new. There weren't thousands of talks competing for attention. There was a much shorter list. Because of that, and the fact that the speech was good, Simon Sinek's How Great Leaders Inspire Action TED Talk caught TED's curators' attention. As a result, in May 2010, it was featured on TED.com website alongside the TED Talks. Timing helped. There's no question about that. But timing only gets you noticed. It does not keep 100 million people watching. The talk had to earn that on its own. For you as a speaker, it means that if you have a message you want to share, start speaking at every small platform, even with 50 people in a room, like Simon Sinek did. Refine your message, make it strong, so when the right moment comes, you're ready for it. Another outside factor that helped Simon Sinek's TED Talk go viral is that he published his book Start With Why right after he gave his TED Talk. Simon Sinek's TED Talk was filmed in September 2009. His book, Start With Why, published in October 2009. The talk and the book were essentially the same idea in two different formats, and they amplified each other. The talk sent people to the book, and the book sent people back to the talk. If you are building a speaking career, your talk should never be the only place your idea lives. The talk is a door. There needs to be something on the other side, a book, a course, a program that lets people go deeper. And if you have something launching soon, look for ways to time your visibility around it. For example, you can give a TEDx talk, do podcast interviews, get media coverage, all around the same time. That creates momentum. It creates the feeling that you're everywhere. And that feeling is what makes people pay attention to you and what you are doing. Now, here's the thing I told you to watch for. Go back to the Simon Sinek TED Talk, find the 5-minute and 5-second mark and see what happened. When Simon Sinek presented, he had bad audio quality. So in the middle of the talk, someone walks on stage and gives Simon Sinek a replacement microphone. And Simon Sinek doesn't stop his speech. He doesn't even acknowledge it. He just keeps going. Most people don't even remember this moment, even people who watch the talk multiple times, which tells you something interesting. The moment is invisible because his presence did not break. The talk's authority came from inside him, not from the production quality around him. But here's the other thing. That rough, unpolished quality, the bad audio, the flip chart, the mic swap, actually helped. It did not feel like a corporate keynote. It felt like someone had something important to say. Your message doesn't become powerful because everything around is perfect. It becomes powerful because you stay steady when things are imperfect. So the public speaking lesson for you is this. Don't over-focus on perfect conditions when you speak. Focus on your presence and clarity. If you stay grounded in your message, small disruptions won't matter. And sometimes they even make you feel more real and trustworthy. So the Simon Sinek Start With Why TED Talk did not go viral because Simon Sinek is a genius or because he had the best idea. It went viral because he presented his idea in a way that challenged people's thinking and encouraged to act. He showed them a framework they could easily draw. He gave them a phrase they couldn't forget. And he supported that with examples they already believed in. That's the real takeaway. Great speeches don't spread because they're impressive. They spread because someone can share the idea again, tomorrow. If you haven't grabbed the Level Up Your Public Speaking Guide yet, get it using the link in the description below. It will show you what stage you are at right now as a public speaker and how to get to the next level. So go check it out. And if you want to watch another TED Talk breakdown, check this video next.